24 of the game's most accomplished champions and emerging superstars joining together as the best of the best from the United States take on the top international players outside of Europe.
It is time, Marco, to talk a little President's Cup because it is now becoming more and more official. We know who the top 10 are. The captain's picks are just around the corner, and it's exciting times.
You betcha it is. And Matt Kamienski, who runs the President's Cup here in Australia and for the PGA Tours, with us once again. Nice to see you, Matt. How was Korea?
Korea was good. Yeah, it was a quick trip up there. The Songdo Championship was going on up there at the at Songdo Jack Nicklaus's golf course there in Songdo. So yeah, the Champions Tour event.
Did you have to pledge allegiance to KJ Choi and YEM at any stage?
You would have liked that, right?
Well, I pledge allegiance to KJ a reasonable amount of time.
Or once a week,
particularly when he salutes at 80-1. That's always nice. How big a part of that is your role? I mean, obviously your role here is actually getting Royal Melbourne looking magnificent, getting all the sponsors, tents and the grandstands and everything ready to go. But looking forward, I mean, that's still your responsibility?
Yeah, it's a big part of my responsibility. Yeah, living and breathing every year. I mean, I guess my 100% focus is on the President's Cup. And so, it's advantage for me to go up there knowing what we've been through down here and if that's a viable spot for us to go to for the 2015 event.
Speaking of Frank Nobilo last week, he was fantastic, by the way. It was a shame he couldn't be there.
Yeah, I'm ashamed I missed that.
When we were talking about the President's Cup v. the Ryder Cup, he was talking about, his words were Samuel Ryder, who got the Ryder Cup up and going. He was really keen for it just to be a real exhibition of golf. And Frank had the feeling that what he would love to have seen, and it's a great idea for us, is to have the President's Cup as kind of like the qualifier for the Ryder Cup. So, for instance, if you win the Ryder Cup, then the loser of the Ryder Cup actually goes and plays the President's Cup, and then those two teams play for the right to challenge for the Ryder Cup. Now, look, this is obviously coming from an Australian, and we're all Australian here, and Frank Nobilo, a New Zealander. It really crystallised in my mind last year that, wouldn't that be fantastic for golf to see some of our guys actually play for the Ryder Cup? Now, who knows how the PGA basically own and run it.
The PGA and the European Tour. So, when it's in the United States, the PGA of America runs it, and then European Tour.
Is anything like that ever spoken about at PGA Tour headquarters?
Look, I wouldn't know, but I mean, it's one of those things that it would be pretty amazing if you had the opportunity for the international team to play the European team, or then they kind of alternate.
Even give the American team like a year off. So the Americans, if they win the Ryder Cup, then they don't have to worry for a year. They can sit back and relax. But every year, if you're a good player, you've got to schedule some time.
Yep.
Obviously it's a great honour to do it, but
Absolutely.
You think some of the best, they might be worn down. They might like to sit back and just watch the President's Cup and see who they're going to play next year.
It'd be a hard one, but I mean, I think, from a fan standpoint, it'd be phenomenal. And from a player standpoint, I think they'd absolutely love it.
For the rest of the world, it would be unbelievable. And that would, I'm not saying the President's Cup's the second cousin or anything, but it would give the President's Cup that much more. Come on, we've got to try and win this Ryder Cup. You can just imagine, the Europeans are playing the international team for the right to play America next year, and it's going to be at wherever. But, the rest of the world, the rest of the golfing world would just be, I reckon, transfixed to their TVs to see what would happen. But anyway, I'm sure it's a long way off if it ever happens.
You just mentioned about players possibly having a year off, if the Americans earn and all the rest of it. We're seeing at the moment in tennis, Matt, there's an issue where players on the ATP Tour may strike because they've overcrowded. You hear they went from the US Open to Davis Cup to national duties as well. Has there ever been an issue in golf where players have been worried that their schedules are too overcrowded?
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the main reasons why the FedEx Cup was kind of set up in the way the schedule was, is to give guys that time and give them a little bit of off season.
4 weeks in a row.
Yeah, there wasn't an off season for a long time there on the US Tour. So, I think where that event sits, the President's typically, this is a different animal here in November just because of weather and playing down here in Australia. But typically the Ryder Cup, President's Cup would sit right around the Tour Championship or just after, in that first week of October. And going forward, that's kind of where it's scheduled. So it works okay. And then after that, they're off in a sense. So, guys may want to have the time up, but I think the guys love playing these team events because they just don't get to do it very often.
You talk to Freddie Couples on a regular basis, I imagine, at least you're in correspondence
with the
Fred.
folks that are,
Can you send him my apologies? Because I was reasonably confident that Ricky Fowler, particularly after Cameron Rose last week from Bushnell, basically said that he's coming down the play. He must be in the Ryder Cup.
I remember that.
I apologise to you. I apologise to Fred. I apologise to all the Ricky Fowler fans in Australia who are dying for him.
You should apologise to all the listeners that might have went out and made a bet. I don't know.
Well, I apologise to everyone because Fred Couples has come out and said basically it's between Keegan Bradley, Billy Haas, and one other. Brant Snedeker as well. Yeah. So, poor old Ricky.
And Cameron Rose off air, he wouldn't even allow us to say, look, there's a chance. Oh, no. He's in. That's it. This is not. No correspondence will be entered into. So, interesting one. But yeah.
Well, look, it's Sunday. When do we find out when those captain picks come through? When do you find out?
Captain's picks for everybody. We'll find out on Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning. So next Wednesday morning.
Tuesday night in the States and Wednesday here. So
righto. Stay tuned.
I'll tell you what, we were getting very excited. So what we thought we'd do is, well, not only have Matt here to talk President's Cup, but also get the number one golf rider from the age in Melbourne, Martin Blake, to join us.
Because Matt Kamienski set up a little game at Royal Melbourne that you unfortunately weren't invited to because we thought Matt was going to play.
I was going to play Cam.
And then Matt didn't even play.
I should have just... my fault.
We're sorry, Cameron.
Welcoming the number one golf rider at the age, Martin Blake, a man who he got to play on Monday at Royal Melbourne while I was sitting at my desk working hard. Martin, how you doing?
Somebody's got to do it, mate. I'm very good, thanks.
Well done, Martin.
Martin, we had a game. It was fantastic. We went down there and we'd both played the golf course and been to the golf course a year ago. We knew about the different grasses put down. Matt Kamienski's in the room, so be careful. But what do you think?
Absolutely sensational. I mean, the difference in the last 12 months is incredible. I mean, you get used to, I've played Royal quite a few times over the years, and it's generally fantastic. But they obviously had some issues down there, especially with the greens, and they've got the new legend Cooch on the fairways. So, 18 months ago it wasn't up to its reputation, but the club's done a good job, and I think it's just going to be mint for the President's Cup. It really is.
Well, Martin, that's great to hear, and I'm glad you're able to get out there. Now, were you guys able to jump around a little bit and play some of the composite holes?
That's actually, I'm sure we weren't allowed to, but that's all we did. We actually just played the composite course, Matt. It was, and it wasn't funny, Martin. I mean, we're grown men out there, and this is the difference between Royal Melbourne and other courses. We were grown men. We'd finished the hole. And then we're running back to have putts from different positions just to see how tough it would be.
Yeah.
And we were giggling like schoolgirls, Martin, there for a little while, actually just playing Royal Melbourne.
I was just telling someone today that the pros like you, Mark, you're good enough to keep it under the hole, but I'm not that good, right? So I tend to have the downhill putt, and the downhill putt on a quick green at Royal Melbourne is like putting down a car bonnet. So we tended to muck around a bit. We'd get some of those side hill putts and the downhill slider that you can putt right off the green. That's always a bit of fun.
Can you imagine? One of the great things the USGA do, and they've been doing it, I'm not sure how long, probably the last 5 years anyway, is that they take ordinary golfers on the Monday or the Sunday of the US Open, and they get them to play. Usually they're celebrity types. I know Mark Wahlberg went, who's a single-figure marker, and he shot 90-something at an open course. Now, we saw the greens and all the putts we were having. I reckon my estimation they're running around 10.5, 11. We've got a feeling they're going to be up to 12, perhaps even 13 for the President's Cup. How do you reckon you, Martin, who's not a bad golfer, by the way, I reckon, what do you play off, about 15? 13, yeah, 13. How do you reckon a 13 marker would go with the greens being 2.5 or an extra 2 feet faster?
Well, if you haven't experienced it, I mean, I've played there quite a few times, as I said, and if you haven't experienced it, it just tears you apart. It does, because you can putt it right off the green. You need to lag your putts up there. You've got to putt off the toe, all those little tricks. But if you haven't experienced it, it's very scary. And it's also scary to chip onto those greens. One thing I noticed the other day, Mark and Matt, was that the bounce that the ball takes when it goes on the green, it's not going to be any dartboard golf out there.
No way.
They're going to have to run that thing up, aren't they?
There's 1-2 big bounces when you land your short iron shots onto the green, and it's hard to stop it. So that's what you want, really. That's what it's kind of links style golf, really.
Absolutely, and that's what forces the players. I mean, the players know this, and they know because the greens are only 20, sometimes only 25 yards or 25 metres deep from the front to the back. Players know that if they're in the rough and they've got tabletop greens, there's no way they're going to be able to keep the ball below. So that's why you've got the widest tree lines you'd ever see. I mean, I think I lost a couple of balls, but if you're playing half decent, you can't really lose golf balls at Royal Melbourne because tree line to tree line is so open. But it forces you, the better player, to hit irons and hit three woods and all those kinds of things. But for you, mate, you can blast away with driver. It's hard to lose a ball.
Exactly. It's the Mackenzie style, isn't it, to allow you to pull out the driver and have a whack. But Jeff Ogilvy, I was talking to Jeff Ogilvy at Augusta a few years ago, which of course is a Mackenzie course as well, and he had the best description of how a pro would work out how to play these courses is that you play it backwards. So you will go to the green, look where you want to putt from, and then you have to work out where you need to hit the fairway to get to that spot, kind of. You know what I mean?
And I think
it's very strategic. The fairway looks wide, but you might not want to hit the right-hand side of the fairway. You might want the left. So because you want to be on the left side of the green because that gives you a putt that you can attack. So that's the way that style of golf works. It's just very interesting to watch. And really looking forward to it, Matt. I think we're going to have a great event here in Melbourne. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it will be, and I think that was a comment that actually Greg made on Monday night when he was on and speaking about his team and the top 10 that came in. Now, do you think when you look at the international side right now, there's a lot of guys that have played Royal Melbourne quite a few times and are experienced on the Sandbelt golf courses down here, especially with the 3 Australians that are there. I mean, do you think the international side has an advantage in that?
Yeah, I think it does because it's so different, this style of golf from what you get on most of the courses in America. So, the Ogilvies, well, it's been well publicised. Jeff Ogilvy, has a house backing onto the course. He's played all his golf here as a young amateur. So those type of players, and Greg, of course, knows it inside out as well. Look, I think America's got a really strong team, and those guys are very capable of working out how to play this style of golf. Don't worry about that.
Who does Greg Norman pick, Martin, with his picks for the Australian team, for the international team?
Look, there's a lot of people saying that he'll go for Allenby, and I wouldn't be surprised if he went for Allenby just for the experience of the Sandbelt, and he's played in the President's Cup quite a few times. I'm not so sure about that. Robert hasn't been playing at his best. He's had a few issues this year, and he hasn't had his best year. I just kind of hope that he will pick Aaron Baddeley for his putting brilliance. He's absolutely sensational, and he also knows his way around. And I'm kind of hoping, I said this to Matt the other day, I'm kind of hoping that Greg might internationalise the team a little as well. So I think if there was, say, 4 Aussies in there, that's enough, really. I think I'd like to see maybe Villegas in the team, or even throw up Johnny Vegas. But he's a little way back in the standings. But we did see Greg pick Ryo Ishikawa last time as one of his captain's picks, and that was a very left field pick. So maybe he does something left field again.
Absolutely. I mean, he's got no shortage of guys to choose from. I mean, in those, from 10 all the way to 25 in the standings. So.
No doubt about that. Good on you, Martin. Thanks for taking a call. We appreciate it. Thanks for the hit on Monday.
Thanks, Martin.
Excellent, mate. Thank you.
Martin Blake, the number 1 golf writer from The Age in Melbourne. Just before we let you go, Matt, just want to ask, Mark Hayes, another great journalist in Melbourne, loves his golf, did a great article on Michael Jordan about a month ago.
Yep.
Since come out that he's been fined $100K for comments he made about the NBA lockout. Yeah, I hope he hasn't changed his mind. He's not going to visit now, is he? He isn't.
No, I haven't heard that. So,
all right,
no.
I was going to get that over and done with.
If there's a few knocks one night on Mark Hayes' door, and he might want to keep the door closed, I reckon.
Well, we may need to put the hat out for MJ when he gets here at the President's Cup.
Yeah.
Not long to go now, Matt. Looking forward to it, and we'll catch up with you again this time
Absolutely.
next week.
Thanks, Cameron.
Thanks for coming
Mark.
in.
History will be made at Royal Melbourne. Don't miss your chance to be a part of it.